This particular video is introducing a couple of the more remarkable locomotives that were supplied to the Great Western Railway right in its early days, when it's still partly under construction, and they were built by different companies under the instruction of Isambard King of Brunel, who sent the requirements of the locomotives to various manufacturers, and then left it to the manufacturers to come up with their own versions, their own forms of locomotives. So it's very experimental, and they only lasted a very short time, a couple of years at most, and were then withdrawn as experiments that didn't work. But the first one here is Huracan, and it actually was quite successful. It ran certainly as far as Maidenhead from Paddington, or rather the site of what would become Paddington Goods Yard, the original Paddington station, before it was pushed through on to its present position at Praed Street. So Huracan then is a remarkable locomotive. As you can see here, the boiler is separate from all of the driving. These two massive driving wheels. It was thought that big wheels meant high speeds, and it was fairly nippy. And I depicted it here in this video, pulling a selection of both contemporary and slightly later, but still, mid 19th century Great Western Railway broad gauge carriages. So we've got a first, we've got a first, second, another second, a third, remarkably with a roof on, and a utility wagon. So there isn't a gas compartment here, but otherwise this is pretty much how the trains were comprised. They weren't particularly large or heavy, which was just as well for these early locomotives. But Huracan, I think, gives you a flavour of those sort of early days, and it's something quite remarkable to run as part of your early broad gauge layout. You'll see there that the driving rods are fully animated, and I'm never too sure about how the crew were deployed on this locomotive, so I placed them just at the front of the locomotive, and as with so many of these early locomotives, at least one of them would have been travelling backwards. Perhaps the fireman should be over here, but I'm not worried too much about that. I think this is enough of a representation to give you an idea of what it was like with these early locomotives, and I think it's quite remarkable. It looks like one of those great big locomotives with great big driving wheels that were later to be such a feature of the Bristol and Exeter Railway, the Pearson locomotives. But this, of course, is a much earlier experimental type. That's about the standard length of a broad gauge train. I'm just trying to speed it up a little bit because we're getting that strange effect that you see on the films where the wheels appear to be stationary because the frame rate, I'll take the speed down a bit, the frame rate is so much less than coincides with the frame rate of the rotation of the wheels. There we are. And that's probably about the speed it mostly ran at. So that's that one. If we go over here, this is the sister locomotive, Thunderer, and here we have two pairs. So one pair of large driving wheels, got two pairs. So, and an alternative type of boiler, and here we've got the posting carriage, which was designed to be booked by just one family, and it was completely a saloon. Then we have the very first of the long carriages. This is a long Charlie, and actually it's not, it doesn't comprise of two bogies underneath the carriage. Those are fixed wheels there, fixed wheel sets, and then we've got a slightly longer fixed wheel set, 6-wheel second, and another second, and the iron coffin type third, which was absolutely remarkable. It must have been quite quite a business travelling in that. You were basically locked up into an iron box, and on a wet day I suppose it's okay, but on a hot day you'd be cooking. And this is one of the early luggage vans, very large luggage vans, and this is a utility vehicle, a tilt wagon, which allowed for the transport of all sorts of merchandise. We'll just have a look. There's our other train over the way there, so we're not worried about that. And this is of course just a loop of broad gauge track I've laid out just to show you these. So let's have a look at this one running. So let's set it going. This is Thunderer, and again it had a short life but nevertheless I think it might be worth including in any broad gauge layout because it's just so odd, and I really like oddities. So here we are. This is broad gauge circa 1839, 1840, 7-foot gauge, running from just about gets to Maidenhead. There's the other one in the distance. Look, there's Huracan and Thunderer. Huracan never really blew as hard as a Huracan. I suspect Thunderer probably did thunder about quite a bit, but not quite as much as it was expected to do. And both of these locomotives are available for download from my website, and you can see there there's rodding, the piston rods, and the pistons are contained in this sort of arrangement here. That's actually the pistons. And these are steam feeds from the boiler connected to the pistons. The problem with these of course is adhesion. Because you've got just the weight of the frame and of the equipment, the fittings on top, these wheels are not pressed hard against the track. So adhesion is always a problem with this type of locomotive, these early locomotives, and especially with these two. And that's why very quickly on other manufacturers that supplied to the Great Western Railway at the same time placed the boiler on top of the driving wheels in the familiar steam locomotive arrangement that we're all used to. And that of course, the extra weight gave considerable better adhesion to the locomotive than can be seen here. Nevertheless, I think given in the history of locomotives, the early history of steam locomotives, I think they have a little niche. And although Brunel rarely admitted that he was ever wrong, he certainly was wrong in this case. Or rather, the stipulations that the requirements that he gave to locomotive manufacturers to produce these, that ended up with them producing these oddities, they were really, his requirements were really experimental, not really knowing what he was doing. He was a good engineer, not a very good locomotive builder, and these and other weird locomotives in the early days of the Great Western soon had their day when Brunel inspiringly recruited, or gave a job to Daniel Gooch. And it was Gooch of course in the early days of the railway who solved many of the problems with these early locomotives. We did get these Thunderer and Huracan running. He did use them as far as he could, but the sooner he could get rid of them, and with the introduction of the Firefly class of locomotives, that really spelt the end to all of these weird and wonderful locomotives. So there we are, both available from my website, along with these other carriages here for that early period, and also some freight stock, which I'll probably show in another video. So I hope that's of interest. If you have any queries, please leave a comment. If you want to access them, go to my website. They're not on the download station, I don't think. Maybe an earlier version is. But the ones you see running here are running in Trainz a new era, and that's with SP3, bang up to date as of July 2018. And that's what I'm running them in at the moment. And so if you, as I say, if you have a query about them, please leave a comment on YouTube. Please give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and please subscribe, because I don't know what happens when you subscribe, but it's quite nice for me to have lots of subscribers. The more the merrier, and it encourages me to put more videos on